Happy Wednesday. So I hope you're still all staying safe and you're all well. Goodness knows how much longer we're going to be in this for, but we've got to be in it together. So stay at home, stay well, stay safe. My next guest, I think last time I spoke to you, I was very excited. I still am very excited. I had the pleasure of interviewing theatre director Laurence Connor. Please take a look.
Where did your love of theatre begin? Can you remember where it all started for you?
I think probably at school. I was I really enjoyed drama at school. I had a great teacher when I was in my secondary school, a guy called Mr. Bradley, who I found quite inspiring. And of all the classes that I did, that was the thing that I used to look forward to the most. And it was actually, when it came, I remember that sort of moment when you're like 14 and you have to sort of choose your options. And drama was sort of in the same category as something else that I wanted to take. And I was kind of umming and ahhing whether I should take drama. And Mr. Bradley kind of pulled me to one side and just said, I really think you should choose drama. I think you're really good at it, and I think you'll really excel at it. And so I thought, okay, well, no other teacher's taken me to one side and sort of said, I think you should do it. So I sort of took it very seriously, and unfortunately, he left that year. My favourite teacher suddenly was no longer my favourite teacher, but we had a very good next teacher, but I can't remember their name, unfortunately. But but it was, that was where my love started. But I was a working class kid growing up in West London with no idea about any of it, and none of my teachers could tell me, how to become an actor, because that's ultimately what I wanted to be. And it was very, very difficult to know where to start. I mean, I didn't know about drama schools or anything like that. So it was it was tough because I knew I wanted it so badly. And of course, when you would talk to careers teachers, they really couldn't give me the information that I needed. And I remember thinking, I think one person in particular said, well, it's not really a career, is it? It's a hobby. And I was like, well, I've seen a lot of people on stage and a lot of people on telly, and they seem to make it a career. So, I mean, why they can do it, why can't I?
Yeah.
So it was, so that kind of only fired a determination in me to kind of just try and make it happen. And, thanks to amateur theatre and stuff like that, which has sort of allowed me to find a group of people that liked the same things and had the same sort of ambitions, that sort of helped me to sort of finally put my foot into the arena.
Sure. And did you start as an actor then and then go into directing?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that directing was like a mistake, really. It wasn't something I never even considered directing. It was not my first love. I was an actor, and I managed to get myself into a production in Cambridge of West Side Story, which was like this sort of summer show that they were doing in Cambridge, and it was great. And I met a whole bunch of young, talented actors who were beginning their journey. We had this fantastic summer, and then a bunch of us then went on tour for a while, and I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then I was like a jobbing actor for a while, and I would pick up gigs here and there, and for about 10 years I did some things. I went to Aberystwyth, where I played Bill Snibson in Me and My Girl, and then I was in Les Mis, which is kind of where things started to change for me, because I went into that's going to be about 25 years ago or so. And it was the first time that I had been in a long-running musical. It was the first time it was a job where I guess I used to doing 3 months, like rehearsing various different things. I was quite used. I did quite a lot of repertory theatre, so you'd be like performing one thing one day and rehearsing something. So there was a different dynamic. I found going into the long-running show a little hard, I'm honest, because I didn't find myself feeling quite so creative, and so I think I kind of looked at it, and it was, I'd been struggling as an actor for such a long time that just before I got Les Mis, I was questioning whether I still wanted to do it as a profession. I was approaching 30, and I was thinking, God, am I going to get a real job at some point, or am I going to come push through and hope? And I was not really getting the roles that I really wanted to play. And it was whilst doing Les Mis that there was an actress in the show called Bobby Chatt, who is now an agent. And Bobby had, we would sit down in a lot of theatres for about 3 months at a time. And so, when you'd sort of sit down in Liverpool or Manchester, some of the cast would put together a kind of show that they would do on a Sunday, a concert of some sort,
Right.
and perform songs from musicals, and people would come, and the money would go to charity. And Bobby had this idea when we were in Edinburgh that when we go to Liverpool, it would be really great if we, rather than do we did a show, like a full stage production of a slice of Saturday Night, using some of the cast members from Les Miserables. And I sort of liked the idea, and then she sort of said, "But I want you to direct it." Me? Why would I direct it? I'm not a director. She said, "I think you'd be really good at it, and you should give it a go." And so I did it, and it was quite hard because I was directing it, and I guess it was hard to kind of find the discipline and understanding, or even the language that you wanted to sort of make it work. But you find a way, and we did this show, and it was a lot of fun. It was, a 60s musical, and we went on Richard and Judy. We had a makeover from the glums to the glam, and then we did the show this one night. But what we could never have anticipated, and it's just like serendipity really, that the night we performed it, the Sunday that we booked to do the show, was actually the day before we were going to be rehearsing the new Irish company that was going to Les Mis. So Colm Wilkinson was joining the company, and a whole bunch of Irish stars, which meant that the entire creative team from Les Mis were coming up to work. So Cameron McIntosh, Nick Allen, all these people from the company were coming. And of course, they found themselves in Liverpool on a Sunday night with nothing to do. So they all came to see the show. And it was a fun night. I sort of, suddenly I think people were like, who directed this? Who put this together? And so my name came up. And then the next thing I knew, that the next question posed to me, like as I was coming to the end of that contract, a friend of mine, got in contact and said they're looking for a children's director on the site in London, and I think you'd be really good at it. Is that something you would be interested in meeting about? And I just thought, you know what? Maybe if I did do that, maybe if I just gave that a year, I could always, if I don't like it, I could always go back to being an actor, or I could just give up the business completely. And so I went to London to do that, and actually for sort of reasons that I can't really go into, I ended up becoming the resident director after about 6 or 7. And so suddenly I was kind of like the resident director of the show, and then I was, helping with the cast change and putting the new company in, and then I was helping sort of on the tour, sort of creating the show. And then that's when I was on the tour of King and that I got a call from Cameron McIntosh's office asking if I'd like to come and meet Cameron to talk about Phantom of the Opera. And I think that's when, when I went to sort of become the associate director of Phantom of the Opera, that sort of everything sort of changed then. That's when I began a relationship with Cameron.
Wow.
So it kind of found itself. It just sort of happened, really. It wasn't something I was seeking. It was just the right place at the right time, and having the right things to say, or things maybe I just said it in a way that they hadn't heard before, or I was very direct, or I don't know, but very forthright in my ideas, that it just sort of, it just doesn't seem to happen. But yeah, that's it, from actor to without any sort of real training. It was quite crazy.
That's brilliant though, isn't it? You're very right. Sometimes these things happen organically. They weren't where they were supposed to be. It wasn't even in your mind that that's what was going to happen. But look at where it's led you. How brilliant is that?
Yeah. And timing, I mean, that's also the thing, is because it just so happened to be at a time where these sort of legendary shows had been running for a while, and I'd been working with Cameron on Phantom for about 2 or 3 years when well, actually, I'd only been working with him on Phantom for a year when I put a new cast in to the show, which included Ramin, Earl Carpenter, and it was a very different. Suddenly I was quite insistent that we looked at sort of changing the dynamic of the show a little bit, making it a bit more edgy, finding a way to sort of dramatize it, and almost give a sort of sexual energy to the show that I sort of felt had kind of lost its way a bit, and really develop that trio, so that you've got that real love triangle sort of really intensely and believably, and that fired up. I think when Cameron came to see that cast, he was very excited by the production. Just so happened to sort of coincide with a time where Miss Saigon was about he had just done the Miss Saigon tour, the original version, and he was talking about doing another tour, but with a smaller set, with a smaller idea, something that could roll into theatres quicker than the original one did. And so that's where we started to create a new show, and that I think that was Cameron's very first attempt to do anything like that, and it was a big gamble, I think, on his part, but he could sort of see the benefit of doing that, and so when it came, it was a few years later, and around sort of coming up to the 25th year of Les Miserables, we ended up having a conversation about Les Miserables and looking at that as something to do a new version of and take it to a different level. And he liked the idea of there being two directors, because unlike musicals, I think usually with a musical, generally speaking, you have like a director and a choreographer. So you've got two kind of artistic creatives with very different viewpoints about how things are done. And it helps the sort of the staging. You find a sort of rhythm of a language, and it's that bouncing off of one another that really sort of helps create a show. With Les Mis, you don't really have that. So the original production was created, with Trevor Nunn and John Caird and two directors, and I think Cameron wanted to hold that sort of idea together. And so James Powell and I, started talking, and James had been involved with the original production for many, many years. He knew every bit of the original, whereas I had been in it, but by that point I'd completely forgotten what Les Mis, how it went and what you did. And so I guess I came, it just allowed me to kind of come at it with a very fresh pair of eyes and look at it in a slightly different way. And then James was able to sort of, bring all the iconic stuff that everyone sort of knows and loves, and sort of, hold on to what people love about Les Mis. And so between the two of us, I mean, it was a difficult thing to navigate to start with, because we're both directors in our own right, and I think to sort of come together with very opposing ideas at the time, you have to navigate some pretty choppy waters to make. But we did, and we opened it in Cardiff, actually, which was at the Millennium Centre, and it was like an incredible opening night. We could never have dreamt that it would have gone so well, and the rest sort of is history. After that, we started to sort of create new shows all over the place.
Yeah, amazing, incredible. It's so brilliant to hear how you work, and how, like you say, working with another director when you've both worked individually and within your own right, and then to come together and have those opposing ideas and ideologies it must be quite difficult.
Yeah, it was, but actually, it was more to do with ego, I think, on both of our parts, than it was about actually what the other one brought. Because actually, James is a fine director and has some really great ideas and some really great ways to sort of come up with stuff. And And actually, when you bounce it off each other in that way, you sort of leave the ego behind. It sort of it became very creative because we both sort of brought something else to each other that was kind of important. And and so we recently we haven't I think we've only worked together on the show a few times. We came together obviously to do it on Broadway, and we came together recently in London just beginning of the year to open it at the Sondheim Theatre. And actually, I've got to say, the Sondheim Theatre, we were two old friends just sort of getting in a room together. And whilst we hadn't done it for a while, and I guess we both wanted to rethink a few things and, try new things, make it new. It's a different theatre, it's a very different space. There was a few things I felt like the show had kind of lost its way a little bit over the last few years, productions that I'd seen of it, and I felt like, start again, let's do it. And actually, it was like a dream to work with each other again, because we knew each other now. We knew how to work with one another. We respected one another's opinions in ways that at the beginning was a little harder. And it was just an absolute joy. And I think you really see it in the production. It was the production in London at the Sondheim, just before the close down. It was really, really a wonderful cast and a really lovely production. And the theatre just looked so beautiful to put the production into. So, yeah, it was a kind of happy ending, if you like, for that particular production.
And when you create a production, when you get into it, is there a moment of the journey of directing a show that you enjoy the most?
I think probably, weirdly, the tech period of it, because I think that's the boring bit, I think, for most actors, because there's a lot of hanging around and you're just waiting to do your bit. But when you're a director, you are, it's like you've suddenly got all these toys, like all these little toys that you've been playing in a little model box. You get to sort of see on a big scale, and also you get to work with other incredible creative minds. And so when you've got Paulie Constable, Bruno Poet as your lighting designer, and you're going off to have like conversations about how you want this scene to look or what we're trying to achieve, it's wonderful. And whilst working with actors, it's a very different dynamic. The creativity that you create in a room is a very special relationship. There's a birthing of creativity within how the story is going to sort of work its way out, and what when you sort of create that moment with an actor, where they just land the narrative of what you're trying to get, dramatize in such an incredible way. Those moments are extraordinary, and then then when you get to sort of put that on stage, it's almost like you have to sort of leave that away for a couple of weeks while you kind of go, well, I know you guys are going to be fine with that. We did that, so we're just going to now see if we can do that with a costume on. And now we're going to put some lights on it, and we're going to bring it to life. And it's a way, especially with a musical, it's the way that when the orchestra joins the tech and all the elements start to sort of magically work together, where you hear the swell of the music with the lighting change and the set move and the drama that the actors are bringing, that you suddenly go, there we go. That's what I want it to be. And it's that's magical, I think, and really, and in a tech, there is no pressure there's a pressure of time, but there's no pressure for an audience to sort of love that moment. In that moment, you've got time to tinkle with it and play with it and move on and sort of do something else. But it's long hours. You're there for sometimes 15 hours because you're getting really early, and but it's the most rewarding part of the work. And it's like when you hit preview, then all of that work then is about allowing someone to see what you've been doing while you've been locked in this dark space, sort of doing that stuff. So yeah, the tech run is where it, like you say, it's where it starts to come together, and you start to see the magic that you've created on paper and in conversation and in the rehearsal room. It all kind of comes together at that point, doesn't it? Yes, but also not. Like sometimes things that you've in your mind, you've gone, this is what it's going to be, and then you get to the theatre and you go, oh God, this is a disaster. It doesn't work,
Yeah.
or that is not how I envisioned it at all. And so you have to sort of, so suddenly on the spot, you've got to rethink it. Like you've got to completely recreate something. I did a new version of Phantom of the Opera a few years ago, and we had this kind of technical idea for what the opening would be. And we got to the tech, and it's the first scene, like the very, like you do the auction, and it's the first scene, and then it's the big Phantom of the Opera song, dun, 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 long piece of music. And in the original, they had all those wonderful drapes that flew out. It was so visual. And we had some other ideas that were very technical. And frankly, when we were putting it together, it was crap. It was just really rubbish. And it looked all good in the model box, all the ideas and designs that were sort of being shown to me. But when you put it all together, you look at it and you just go,
Didn't work.
this just does not, for the scale of this music, this is crap. So we, on the spot, had to recreate. We had to completely come up with something else. And I had this idea that we had all these sort of props on the set that were kind of pieces of material of the operas that had played before that were all on sale. And I just thought it would be quite nice if Raoul is in the middle of the stage, and it's almost like those props sort of come to life as a sort of memory of him remembering how this theatre once worked, and that we saturate, like we bring the sort of darkness and we slowly build light and sort of smoke, and he's right in the middle of the stage, and that we're actually watching the stage come to life as opposed to going back in time. And that was kind of how we managed to do that. But of course, we had to sort of completely give up the tech, or just to I played with this idea because it was our actual technical idea was just so shoddy, so it wasn't thought out. And that's just the way it is. That often happens, and you get into certain set moves, and you go, oh, that doesn't look as good as it did in the model box, or that's not as clever as we thought it was going to be. And so you have to rethink it.
But I guess sometimes that's the beauty of it, though. I know, like, in that moment, you're a bit gutted that it didn't come to fruition as you thought it would. But actually, there's that beauty of we've got to make this work, and we've got to do something else, and we've got to do it now. So that spontaneity then, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what I mean about the support of the collective brilliant minds of your creatives, because you're all in this one space. And whilst I think when you see a show like I don't know, Phantom of the Opera, it's easy to forget actually the incredible people that create that, because you're so enamored by the people that are singing and performing for you, and who look beautiful and get to show their skills. But when you're sort of working with a brilliant lighting designer, a brilliant set designer, brilliant choreographer, and you're all around a table, and you're just saying, this doesn't work, what can we do? And then everyone starts to bounce ideas. It's a journey.
And when you're directing a tour, do you need to think of things whilst you're rehearsing how to adapt to different venues, or do you do that once you get into the venue?
I think you generally, when you create a tour, you tend to look at your smallest venue as your, and then you sort of start from that, and then you scale out, right? So at least you know that even in your smallest venue, that the show is going to work. Staging wise, I think you kind of tend to think a little bit more to the first venue that you're going to work with, because that's the immediacy. So that's when you're teching, you only see what you see, and you've only got that to work with, and so you work with that. And usually by the time you get to your smallest venue, the show is running itself so well that you know how to pare it down, how to simplify things, how the set's going to come in, and then you tend to rehearse the piece ahead of time with a blueprint on the stage, of the bigger stage that you're working on, that's going to say, right, this set's all going to come in a bit. And they try and work around it. So that's kind of how you kind of work the mechanics of it all. But when you do a US tour, of course, like all those theatres are so massive, it sort of doesn't matter. It all works. Sometimes it's about scale. sometimes you go and see the show, and you're like, why is everybody screaming at me? And it's because, you know, they've been playing Barnes, and they've gotten so used to the, like, having to really play, they're acting at a point, and so you sort of, it's massive. But you know, you understand that as a tour, they get it into their body, and they forget that they're maybe playing a slightly more intimate venue, and that perhaps they don't need to be quite as, you know, laboured in their performance. Yeah.
Is there a special venue for you, somewhere that holds a special place in your heart, or somewhere that you absolutely loved putting on a show?
You know, the Gillian Lynn, I absolutely love that theatre. It's a very different kind of space. I love working in the thrust. I love the idea of the company coming right out to the audience. I love the intimacy of the space. It is fantastic. It's a great venue. It's a little bit, and I think, you know, I'm always a little bit scared to say this, because I always sound like an old man when I say this, but I'm a bit of a rock and roller at heart, and I think that, you know, the VOMs, the sense, the energy of that place, it's such a rock and roll style venue. And so when we were looking to put School of Rock into London, you know, it was, School of Rock on Broadway was a much completely different affair. We were at the Winter Garden Theatre. It was a gigantic stage. We had a proper big Broadway set, and it was always, I felt that sometimes the set took away. It was a great Broadway show, but it sort of took away from something that we had created in a workshop space in New York, when it was just this little rock venue we took, and it was just children on stage, and, you know, we were moving boxes around, and, you know, just to sort of create it. But the energy from that production, from the workshop, was far more interesting than the Broadway show, in my opinion, because it was warts and all. You were close to the kids. You could see them fingering the strings, and that made it special. You knew those kids were playing. You never doubted it. On Broadway, you could question it, and even though they were 100% doing it, it was hard, because So, you know, the first things we set to change, when we came to London, when I saw what was then called the New London Theatre, when I looked at the New London, I just said, I love it, because it reminds me of where we birthed this. It reminds me of the venue that the Gramercy place where we sort of created the show in its workshop phase. And I think there's the opportunity to put the band in sight. So like we did at the Gramercy, when the kids are playing, we can see the kids. I want to see the band put their instruments down and come to the front and be an audience members, so that people can see that they are not playing. This is completely them. And that sort of brought us back to that. We stripped it down. We stripped the set down to simplify. And it was better for it, because suddenly it helped you really focus in on those kids. And ultimately, that's sort of the whole reason. That was the reason to make that show a musical. Yeah, anything that takes you away from that is not a good thing. You want to keep it simple.
And you talked a little bit there about working with the children. As a director, how do you find that, working, you know, usually working with adults, and then all of a sudden you're bombarded with all these smaller minds? How does that work for you?
Well, I like working with kids. I mean, kids sort of keep the sort of rehearsal room kind of energized, and they you know, the strange thing about it is you end up sort of becoming when you start working with the kids, you have to find a way to make them feel like they're part of the cast. You have to treat them like adults, really, but in a kind of playground sort of way, and so you end up sort of doing the opposite. You sort of, I find myself becoming a big kid, and I end up sort of like, you know, like joking around with them and sort of like teasing them a bit, you know. I try and use words that I know that the kids are using that I would ordinarily not use, but in RP voice, sort of saying to them, let's just say woke, you know, and then they'll kind of, you see them laughing because they just don't see this old man sort of talking like that. But they sort of, as long as you put them at ease, they'll come at it with a lot of energy, and they just really want to please. They really want to show you that they can do it, and they'll work really hard. So yeah, I find it harder here because you only have the same amount of rehearsal time that you would anywhere, but you have 3 times the amount of children. So you can't give all the attention to the children that you want to. So you'll kind of set the idea of what you want it to be, and you might do that with one team, and then someone will have to take the other teams out and work that while I move on, or I worked with one team like yesterday, and that was really great, and then we're continuing the work, but now I'm doing it with a different team, and it's sort of like they're not quite caught up on what we did yesterday, so that they can't go forward, so you'll kind of have to go back. So it just sort of it can be complicated. When you work in America, they have one team, and they are like adults. They're paid like adults, and so you get them like you do adults, and so it's easier because you're working, even though they're younger and they don't get things straight away every time. You have more time with them to develop the skill and to build it, and I think that's part of why it was important to open School of Rock in America as opposed to opening it here, because there were three challenges that I really saw. The first one was, actually having enough time to rehearse children, and having one team really made all the difference. Whilst it was far more expensive to do it, it was a creative thing, and you could really only create it with one team of children when there's so much at the forefront of what we're doing. The second thing was we were a very British team. It was Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber, Lord Julian Fellows, and Laurence Connor, and we had Joanne Hunter, who was such an amazing choreographer in America, but she was really our only American person on the team, and we brought Anna Louises, who was the designer, and of course Natasha Katz. So we had some other creatives that were American, but it had to have an American energy to it, and like when Julian would write things, he would write things in a very British way, and so we needed an American cast to kind of say, we would never say, car park, it would be like parking lot, and so it was little adjustments that we needed to kind of make happen that really helped. And of course, also the type of comedy that he had to have that energy and an American style to it.
Yeah, I saw the production in London, and yeah, it's for someone who works, I have my own children's theatre company, and for somebody who works with kids constantly, it was just to watch these kids on the stage, because where we are in Pembrokeshire, it's on a much smaller scale, obviously, but I just wanted to know what you think about working with children, because obviously that's what I do day in, day out, and I wonder how you found it different to working with adults. But yeah, the energy that they have is infectious, and it's they just bring something totally different to any kind of space.
Well, what made you want to work with children? I feel like I'm interviewing now, but what made you want to work with children?
I started my first theatre company when I was 14, so I was still a child running a group, and I did that for 4 years and thought I only really wanted to do it because there wasn't really anything else for our age group locally. But then I want to go off and I want to be an actor. That's what I want to do. But I miss being in charge of other people rather than being told what to do, because I am quite creative. I have all these things going through my mind, and I thought I really like people to do that. So I just workshopped something once. I came back home and was like, I'm just going to do a workshop and see how it goes. And all of the children just appeared, and I thought, oh my god, this is incredible. And they give you so much back that I felt like as a actor I didn't give to the director. Does that make sense? As an actor, the director tells you what to do and you do it. Whereas when I was directing something, the kids, they've not got that, like, not etiquette, but they'll tell you, oh, Jen, do you really want me to do it like that? Or I could do it like this. They've got that energy and almost that attitude and that sass of, that's a good idea, but I can see it like this. And they brought that to it. And I kind of thought, this is really cool. I can give my ideas, but also I'm getting so much back from them. I'm learning as much as they're learning. And I loved that relationship. I really liked that, the rapport that I had with them. And then, I just started writing shows for the group of children that I had at the time. And it was nice to create a character almost for that child. And they kind of said to me, oh my God, that's really cool because you've got that sense of humor. And I was like, well, yeah, because you've watched them as they work, you kind of, you know where their little niches are, you know what but also you can see the potential in them expanding in other ways. And I love that. I absolutely love watching them play, actually.
Yeah.
Essentially what it is. So I love it.
Well, I think that I totally understand that. I really do, because that was kind of, I mean, I have worked with children a lot over the years, but School of Rock was definitely very special because it was, they really were the stars of the show, even though whoever played Dewey had a massive job to do. The Deweys were only ever successful if they really knew that ultimately they had to give it to the children, because the children will always be the stars of the show. But when we did, when I was working on School of Rock, I had this idea to do a new version of Jospeh, where I'd spoken to Andrew about it, because I loved working with the kids so much that I felt that Jospeh. I always loved Jospeh, and I loved the version that Jason Donovan was in, and blah blah blah. But for me, the show was written originally for children in a school to perform, and every beaming parent has sort of sat and adored their children, sort of swaying and sing Coat of Many. And so to sort of see the children put into a kind of choir, just to give us the voices, felt like we were losing something in the performance energy that children bring to it. And so I sort of said, look, when I listen to the show, when I listen to the thing, the narrator feels like the lead character, who is this kind of wild, crazy, big kid who's able to kind of, create the imagination and freedom of children to kind of rebel and want to do. That it would be great to have a sort of Sheridan Smith style person who is able to kind of just be, wacky and fun with the kids, and allow them to be themselves and create, and let the show work around them. And that there would be like 6 children that would end up sort of being brothers in the company, and that it would be that we would end up sort of having like fun with them. So they would put beards on, and they would join the adults and be just in the show. And let's just see what happens with it. It might be a terrible idea, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. And I love the idea that the narrator would also sort of take on role. So just like in order for the leadership of that, to see Sheridan put on a beard and play Jacob, and suddenly bring the whole thing to life. And then she played Mrs. Potiphar. So Potiphar was played by a child, and she played Mrs. Potiphar. So you got this little kid saying, "You're mine," and I just thought it was kind of way of kind of marrying what you get from a school's production with what you get from a West End, and just sort of throwing it together, and sort of making the sort of fun and playfulness of Jospeh part of the language of the show. And we did that last year, which was so much fun. Like, we did that at the Palladium, and the children were extraordinary because they, like you say, they have all these ideas. They've got things that they want to try. They come up with things and say, "Can I try this?" And you're like, "Yeah, let's do that. Let's give that a go, and let's play with that." And you can't, like, sometimes you can't come up with better. Like, they say something, you're like, "That's incredible." Yeah, that's just genius. We'll have that. Do you hear that? You're going to do that too, yeah? So that's great. So that's how it works.
I do that so many times. I love going into a rehearsal room with my plan and my idea. I'm terrible. I'm such a planner. I'm such a, I vision everything, and I've got it going on, and I'm like, I know what I'm doing. And I love going into that rehearsal space, and it literally all gets thrown out of the window. All of it. Because you've got the base, you give them, the tool, if you like, and they sculpt. And I think that for me is what I love about working with children. From our youngest in our main company is 7 and our eldest is 15. And again, that just joy of marrying that tiny little child and their crazy idea with, although more mature, still that childlike and can see the playfulness. And I love it. It is a slog sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Can be, banging your head against a brick wall, but I think that's the same with any production. I should imagine it is. I love it. I do love my job.
Well, that's it. That's all you could ever ask for. I bet you miss it now.
I do. Do you know what I do? Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I can do a couple of online classes, but it's just not the same because with kids it has to be very hands-on and it has to be and on a screen it's just not the same thing. It isn't the same. Yeah, we can't wait. We were a week away actually from our big show, so we do a show every year. We were a week away from it when we actually had to go into lockdown, which was such a shame. But
well, now you'll have to do a bigger show when it's all finished, so that you can sort of celebrate in a way that people are going to want to be celebrating after this. So.
Absolutely, yes. Oh yeah, we did say, don't you worry, it's not going to be cancelled. We'll definitely postpone it, and I'm already thinking about how we're going to make it bigger and better than what it would have been. But yeah, it's always good fun. It's always a good laugh. There's nothing better, is there, than going to work and having a great time, enjoying your job.
Oh yeah, and that's why I think we're very lucky, because I do think, there is an element of stress. I mean, certainly when you're sort of given millions and millions of pounds of somebody's money to sort of make it work, and then on the one hand that's great because you get to do amazing things, but by the other hand it's sort of like there's a lot of pressure to pull it off. But the idea that we get to go in a room and play and have fun and get this really cool technical stuff to play with is just extraordinary. There's no job quite like it. And, I'm fortunate enough to travel and see lots of countries as a result of what I do. So it is an extraordinary thing to do. So yeah, I pinch myself often that I'm allowed to do it.
If you could, given the choice of a different role within the industry, so exploring like a conductor, choreographer, stage manager, is there anything that you are intrigued by, or that, if you were just given a day where you could play with any role, what would you choose?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I think truly I would be more interested in sitting in a workshop and working with the mechanics of these things happening, because I like the engineering aspect. For example, you sort of show, for example, the helicopter in Miss Saigon, okay? It was an incredible feat and very, very difficult to sort of, technically get that to look like a helicopter flying in. But if nothing is more impressive than just seeing the mechanical inside of the way that thing works. It is extraordinary. All these gears and levers and various different things that move it in a way that you can't imagine. You see it just come in. You just see the actual helicopter, the bits that are underneath it. Oh, that's incredible. So yeah, I guess that part of thing I find extraordinary. Like I go in early. I spend time being around it because I want to understand it. I want to know exactly what it is, why it works, so that when it goes wrong, I'm there saying, why is the blah 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 happened, or did this have we failed on this, and is there anything we can do about it? And so yeah, I guess that would be the portion. Yeah, and I guess if I wasn't directing, I could see myself perhaps being in a sort of producerial role, like seeing myself sort of producing or doing something like that. I can imagine a world where I could produce something that I'm totally not involved whilst directing something else. because I just love to see it grow and see more things happen. So yeah.
Brilliant. And if you could get your hands on any show, what show would it be? Is there anything that you've not been a part of that you would just relish?
You know, golly, there aren't many. I'll be honest with you, there aren't many left because I've sort of done all the things I always wanted to do. The one show that I really wanted to do more than anything was Jesus Christ Superstar because I loved that piece so much. And Miss Saigon and Les Mis and Phantom, they're all shows that I really wanted to do. I would love to do Kiss of the Spider Woman. I have an idea for that, which I'd really love to do at some point. And I really love that score. And I think, you know, even the book, the play itself is a fantastic piece of drama. That's definitely something to do that I would love to do. But yeah, I wanted to do chess. I did the version of chess that I wanted to do, and so yeah, it's kind of running out. I mean, God, would I have loved something like Hamilton or something like that when that came out? Sure, that was a great. I mean, that's, you know, that team did the most sensational job on that show. So yeah, I think that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head that I kind of go, I'd love to do that. I think nowadays I'm much more interested in trying to create new work and create brand new shows.
Once lockdown has finished, what will you be doing?
Well, I mean, I think obviously our shows will have to reopen, like Les Miserables, and so, you know, I guess we'll be visiting a few of those to sort of put the feather duster over those that have been kind of not able to perform for a little while. Also, Cinderella is the show that we're working on. I was actually, like you, I was actually day one of my workshop for Cinderella on the day that lockdown happened. And, you know, workshops are quite important because they really tell you what you need to do before you take it to the stage. And on conference calls, like with Andrew and Emerald and David, and we've been rewriting the script and working on the bits that we were working on before we went into lockdown. So we've just finished that sort of point where we kind of go, well, we can do no more. We need to hear people do it and try it now. And I think as soon as this all happens, that's all go. We've got to bring that to stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be a tough one because there's a lot of variables and a lot of unknowns about it. But I think it's also going to be so hungry and creative that actually it potentially could be the most exciting time to create a brand new show.
Yeah, brilliant. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for giving up your time to chat with me today. I've had a fab time listening and learning, and it's great to chat to you.
Well, I had to really break my very busy schedule of mowing the lawn and cooking breakfast. So you're very lucky.
I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
And you, Jen. Lovely to see you.
Yes, you too. Take care.
And I love your thing. I'd really love to know how that worked out. Your show with your children. So please let me know how that worked out. Keep in touch.
Yeah, I will do. I'll keep in touch. I'll keep you posted on what we're doing and everything.
Would love to. All right. Well, take care, Jen.
Yes, you too. Take care. Bye.
Hey.
All the best. Bye.
Massive thanks to Laurence. It was such a fantastic interview, so insightful and amazing to hear about how he's got to where he is today and all the brilliant things that he's been able to do. It was fantastic. So on Saturday, I do have another special guest, and she has been on so many West End stages, in so many musicals, on UK tour, on our television screens. Make sure you tune in on Saturday with the wonderful Ashley Gray. Take care, stay safe. Goodbye.